Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Welcome to Caffe, Lena.
Thank you.
And welcome to The Art of Community, which is a monthly series in which I have sat on this stage with a whole bunch of amazing people who lead nonprofit organizations in Saratoga. And I have picked through brains looking for what inspires people in their work. What role does creativity play in the work that you do? And maybe fishing around a little bit for some stuff that might inspire other community leaders or people who are considering a profession in the nonprofits to pursue that. So that's what we're doing, and I can't wait to find out a little bit more about you. So you are the executive director, Lynn Trizna, of Pitney Meadows Community Farm, which is an amazing place on the other side of Saratoga. So I think just to orient people a little bit, why don't you start out by just briefly giving us an overview of what Pitney does in Saratoga?
Sure. So the core of what Pitney Meadows does is connecting people to the land, connecting people to the food. So we do that in a lot of different ways. So we have our agricultural side. So we have a pick your own CSA. So people come to the farm with their membership to pick their own produce. We have a farm stand, but we also have recreational trails. What's nice is people that want to walk the trails can either bird, learn about pollinator habitat, see what the farmers are doing, learn a little bit more about like the day-to-days of what goes into farming, in addition to our educational programs, events, and then our first project that really got underway was our community gardens. So we welcome people onto the farm to learn how to grow themselves as we do production agriculture as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear about that side of Saratoga, because I think that when the world thinks about Saratoga, lots of times they think about the downtown core and the economy that's focused around restaurants and shops and things like that. But we are in a beautiful location just south of the Adirondack Park, and this land of Saratoga Springs has a lot of magic in it because of the springs and the earth itself. So I look forward to spending a little bit of time focusing on that side of Saratoga.
Yeah, I like to think that we, as we're busy with our to-do lists and going on to the next event, Pitney Meadows offers an opportunity to operate at a pace of wonder, of, new experiences, slowing down a little bit, paying attention to the environment and observing, which we don't get to shut down very often. We're always on the go, and sometimes just the immense healing powers of just sitting and observing nature.
Yeah, we were designed to do that.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about how you got on this path of working in the nonprofit sector and doing something with your life that I think contributes to the health of humans and the earth.
Yeah, so I never imagined myself as an executive director of a nonprofit, just as like I never imagined myself a farmer. But, I worked my way into this position, and, thinking about, even from a kid, I was always drawn to push myself and be in uncomfortable situations and just try something out. So my sister, I have a sister, she's very academic, very driven, very book smart. But she jokes that she needs me to open the door for her because I've always just been a little bit more savvy in that way. And so when I was young, I had a really hard time learning how to read. Like I had to go to special classes, and my parents were really nervous and concerned. But I had convinced a lot of people that I knew how to read because I would have a book with pictures, and I would tell people this amazing story based on the pictures. And so my parents, they told me about this conversation they had where, you know what, Lynn's going to be okay. She doesn't know how to read, but she's convinced everybody that she knows how to read. And that gets you pretty far in life. So I think it's just like I never thought of myself in a leadership role or an executive director of a nonprofit organization, especially one as amazing as Pitney Meadows. But you kind of find what fits you. And I think that Pitney Meadows really fits what I would like to do. And then I can benefit the organization as well. So I like to think it's a mutual symbiotic relationship.
So, I mean, you started by getting your hands in the soil and doing actual farming work, right?
Yep. I worked on my first farm when I was 19 and was just hooked. It just clicked. I was part of an all-female crew, and actually the farmer who took me under her wing, she's actually farming in Saratoga Springs now. So we had an opportunity to reconnect, which was a really cool full circle experience.
And you came to Saratoga within the last year and a half?
September of 2020.
September of 2020.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting time.
It was a really awkward time to leave a community, but then also come to a community. No one really knew. It was like I had a friend who transferred schools before his freshman year of high school, so no one knew he was the new kid, and that's kind of how it felt during COVID. You know, everyone was very alone and isolated, but Pitney Meadows is a great place to connect with if you're new. So being part of that organization, it was really easy to find people that spoke my same language and had similar interests.
So how did you go from growing food to managing an organization that's growing food? Because there's a huge difference in those two skill sets, and what drew you along on that path?
So I had been part of production farming for years for both nonprofit and for-profit farms. And in my experience, just the nature of the farms I worked for, the experience was limited to myself and my crew. But, there's this beautiful property, there's this beautiful experience of seeing where your food comes from and having that connection. And I wanted to share that. So as much as I love farming and went through kind of an identity crisis, not being a farmer anymore, being able to share that experience and, if I can provide the farming experience to so many people, that's worth the sacrifice of me, myself, not being a farmer anymore. I still have a 1/4-acre garden, so I'm doing okay, but I really, as a farmer without a farm and not be able to afford land, being able to provide that experience for other people, it's worth that shift, and that's why I made it.
Yeah. So talk about some of the things that you had to learn in order to step into this position.
Trying to think of what I didn't have to learn, like being a farmer. In my previous position, we had different groups of interns. And we always joked of like, oh, add it to the resume, because farmers have to be good at everything. They can't afford necessarily to outsource. So it's like marketing, mechanic, finances, everything. But then being an executive director, it like bumped me up to a whole nother level. So definitely a huge learning curve, but I mean, very valuable and translates. It's a little bit different, but also very similar. So it's just like kicking me up a notch. But what's so great is very similar to the farming community, the nonprofit community. People are very willing to help and make sure you succeed. So, at our community forum recently, I talked about Mr. Rogers of, look to the helpers. Mm-hmm. And there's so many helpers in the nonprofit world. So.
Well, that's amazing. I feel like one of the big things that I've had to learn around here is management skills, personnel management. And that's been a big learning curve for me since we completed the renovation of this building about 5 years ago and started to kind of grow by leaps and bounds. And so after a long period of just doing most of it on my own and being answerable to myself, I needed to be aware of many different people, each with their own to-do lists and how these things all fit together and lead to the fulfillment of our mission and our bigger goals. And so I'm constantly, out there in the world looking for the next book or the next podcast that's going to kind of help me learn what I need to learn. How are you teaching yourself these skills, or what's your go-to?
I've discovered mindfulness podcasts, and I don't have the patience, and I can't sit still long enough to meditate, but I understand the value of that. So having, listening to experts of how to retrain your mind to be really positive, because it's like when you have so much work to do and you feel the pressure of seeing an organization succeed, you can get in this loop of negativity, but it's hard to find success when all you're thinking about is negative thoughts. So thinking about my mind is a very important muscle, and I can retrain it to be positive, and that'll help me and the organization meet success because I'm thinking about opportunities versus shortfalls. So, and then just like, I love fiction. I love, escaping and thinking about, I can sometimes get my blinders on and, Pitney Meadows is my whole entire world, but there's a whole world out there. And what I may think is an emergency or life or death, like in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot going on in the world. And this is a blip, that isn't even on a lot of people's radar. So, having that mindfulness of retraining my mind paired with, all right, let's escape for a little while and think about, the bigger picture. Because like in a week, I'm not even going to remember this issue. And I'm definitely not going to remember it in a month. And then I'm going to laugh about it in a year. So
it's, you are a person who pushes yourself outside your comfort zone, but you get so far out that you could get scared. And then when you get scared, you get kind of paralyzed. And I just set myself the goal of getting 62 new members for Caffe Lena this month in order to have the resources that we need to do our mission work here and to celebrate the fact that Caffe Lena is 62 years old this month. It's a great goal. It's a nice number.
Yeah.
And I woke up in a blind panic this morning. Like, what if I don't make it? Like, how much would it cost to give the gift of 62 memberships to my family?
yeah, of course, yes.
Like, I'm not going to buy my way out of this. No, you have to do the work and get out there and do it. So can you give me an example of a situation that kind of transformed for you because you were able to bring positivity to it, whereas you might have brought fear or negativity to it previously?
So Pitney Meadows is going through an immense amount of growth. And so with that growth, we need to think about also stabilization and priorities. So it's weighing our path forward and trying to figure that out, because Pitney Meadows has an immense amount of opportunity, which is great and energizing, but also very scary because we can't do everything. And people would like to see us do everything, and staff would definitely like to as well, but we do have our limitations. So having those hard conversations of, this is what we're doing, this is what we do well, this is what we don't do well, this is within our capacity, and making those tough calls, but being really respectful and listening and giving people time to think about it and hopefully come to the same conclusion. I'm a big fan of talking about things and mulling it over until the person is convinced that it was their idea to start with. So that's always been pretty useful for me. But people need time.
You just gave away your best trick.
I know. Lynn. Can we not? Stream over. No. But and I also know myself, and I'm a very, very much a stubborn person that I want to know all the information to make that informed decision. So because I know that's what I prefer, I give people the courtesy as well. Is like, here's all the information, here's the reasons why, and then it's a lot easier for people to buy into it if they understand my thought pattern that I'm carrying them through with me versus just providing them the end result.
Yeah, I can really hear that, with that kind of stuff going on in your head, you would probably be a little bit frustrated if you were just growing food, because it sounds like you're really putting it into a big picture. And that is pretty neat. Yeah, you had the executive director growing inside you the whole time.
I had no idea.
What's, at this point, what would you say is your favorite part of your job? It's a fairly new job. What's really resonating with you?
So in farming, it's all about problem solving, and it's with elements of what the weather's doing, what my soil is doing, what my staff is doing, growth rates, whether the sun's out, whether it's not out. But having that change to personalities brings a whole nother challenge that I really enjoy, because nonprofits, a lot of people come to nonprofits with passion. And I don't want to dismiss or downplay that passion. I want to use it because I know it's going to help the organization succeed. So it's figuring out how to fit all of these passions together. And, kale plants, they have their challenges, but it's a plant. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't sass me, but having people, it's like this whole other ball game that I really enjoy.
But you almost see it as growing or cultivating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or you need to have the right inputs and make it flourish.
Yeah, farming makes sense to me, so I typically fit everything into farming.
Yeah. So that means that if you see something withering, you don't just walk away from it as a failure, but you think how you can bring it back, how you can revive it, what it needs, what it's not getting.
Yeah, all of my farming mentors have said to invest in your weakness. And so typically with farms, that's like your wash pack area. That's a lot of your inefficiencies and weaknesses. But it's there's a book, I forget the name of the book, but referred to nutrients in the soil as a barrel. So you have all the different strips of the barrel, strips of wood. You have a limiting factor. So if one nutrient or one piece of that barrel only comes up so far, all the water of that barrel is going to drain. And that's going to be your limiting factor. And I think that, that also works with, personalities and people passions and strengths. So just investing in having that barrel fill up completely with water, just as soil nutrients.
That's really neat. At the same time, I know that there are probably days when you probably feel pretty overwhelmed, or you come up against a problem where you just don't know what it needs to make it better. Talk a little bit about your process for how to contend with some of that, just kind of like hitting a wall type of thing that can happen.
Yeah, I think moving, or if I'm having a challenge, I always say, like, can you please walk the trail with me? Can we talk this through and walk the trail at the farm? The farmer in me, I like to move and work through things or talk it through. But also, if I feel like I hit a wall, there's so many people that are willing to help that it really pushes me to go further and go beyond that challenge. Because I know that if I'm stuck, there might be some people stuck behind me, and I don't want anyone to be stuck behind me. I want to keep moving forward, and I don't want to be the limiting factor of the organization.
The short stave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you actually get to go out and participate at all in the farming at this point? You really don't get to?
No, I trust our farm manager. And I love that I don't have to worry about that as well. I mean, as a staff, we want to troubleshoot together and soundboard, and we have one-on-one meetings to talk about it and make sure we're at this. We have like the same understanding of like what our goals are and what our priorities should be. But as much as I would like to some days just be out in the field and not talk to anyone or think about anything, that's not my role. And I really respect my employees of like, this is yours. Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah. How about just getting out into the community garden part of it and interacting with people who have come to make their little raised bed garden?
That's really a highlight of the position, because talking back about like the pace of wonder, it's just a great spot for people to interact that wouldn't otherwise interact, or get over that intimidation of planting a seed, or some people think that growing your own food is magical. It's like, no, it's not actually magical. There's a lot of science and there's a lot of, expertise behind that. But, you're not going to hurt anything by planting a seed. You might do it a little bit wonky. You know, I see some interesting plant spacing as I walk through the community garden, like beets that are like a foot apart and then Brussels sprouts that are like 4 inches apart. And I'm like, ooh, that really should be reversed. But, you know, people are excited and they're learning and growing. And, you know, I was walking through the community garden once with our garden director, and she was saying like, oh yeah, like, you know, you can just tell like some gardens are like prospering and then some gardens look like they're in a little rough shape. But, you know, just kind of letting go that aesthetic and, you know, looking at a garden bed and being like, yeah, but that person's learning. It might not look the way we want it to look, but, you know, I just met that individual yesterday, and like, as much as I'm like, oh, I got some things to say about your plant spacing, like he went there with his kids and was just so stoked. And like, seeing his kids pull that beet out, like, it doesn't matter if it's a foot apart. It's not hurting anything.
Right.
So, you know, and like, we kind of letting go of that aesthetic and then making space for learning and growing, because learning and growing is really messy, and that's okay.
It's almost like the parallel would be our open mic night. You know, we have an open mic here every Monday, and everybody comes to bring something to the stage that is really moving to them. And some of them are able to convey that out to the room, and others are, you know, they get in front of the lights and it's really nerve-wracking. But you definitely have to create those spaces for people to have that entry point into the things that we all love, you know? Yeah. And the other part of it is a lot of the executive directors who have sat up here talking about their work, when I ask them kind of what helps with burnout, in almost every case, it has something to do with touching the work. You know, whether it's sitting on the porch with some wounded veterans, or whether it's taking a bus trip with seniors, or whether it's getting out and walking around the farm, you know.
Yeah.
Just, it's the work itself that can get lost a little bit in all of the paperwork and the spreadsheets and the strategic planning and stuff like that. But it's the work itself that we really love.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is something that you think that the world doesn't really understand about farming that you wish that they knew more about?
Yeah. I think, you know, we recently attended a tractor safety workshop, and one statistic that they mentioned that really stuck with me was only about 2% of the population are farmers. And the farming profession is oftentimes not held at the same tier as other professions, whether it's a doctor or lawyer or whatever else. And there's a downplay of farming, and then there's also a misunderstanding or just not an exposure to what farmers face. And Tim Biello, who's on our advisory council, made a really great point during the community forum, which is, you know, farmers are really trying to pay a lot of attention to being good stewards of the land, getting more towards regenerative agriculture versus conventional, so investing in soil health, but also investing in their labor, so paying a higher wage and having a little bit more separation between work and their personal life, because burnout is a huge thing with farmers. So as they're really pushing themselves to be better stewards, those input costs go up. But then also the farmers who really care about that want to make sure their food is accessible as well. So their inputs are going in by farming the way that they would like to farm and farming in a way that's going to benefit the land. But then they have to pass those costs on, or they have to eat those costs. So then thinking about being good stewards of the community and making sure their food is accessible, that's a really hard spot to be in. Whether you choose to cut corners in your soil, or you can't get the produce to the people that you really want to get your produce to.
Yeah. Yeah, you want everybody to be able to come to the farmer's market, buy locally, go to your farm stand, buy locally, get the very best and the freshest. And you want anybody in the community to be able to do that. And that's some tough choices. Yeah, you don't want to just grow for rich people.
Yeah.
You guys actually grow a lot of food for the food bank, don't you?
We do. We grow about 40% of everything we grow. We donate to, we started with the food bank, but then last year we looked at partnering with different organizations that aren't being served by the food bank because of the lack of refrigeration and ability to store fresh produce. So yeah, we've done a lot of work to try to increase our impact of being really strategic because, you know, one box of our produce, depending on who receives it, can have a really big impact. So someone who, you know, is supported and receives fresh produce from other areas, one box from us is like a drop in the bucket because the need is so high. But for other organizations, a box of fresh produce, when they don't have access to fresh produce because they don't have the refrigeration or storage, you know, that impact increases. So we're really looking at, you know, what we're able to produce and how we can have the most impact.
Yeah.
Because the need is so high.
Yeah.
It's daunting thinking about, you know, we donated 23,000 pounds of produce, but it still feels like a drop in the bucket.
Wow. That sounds like so much. So just stepping back from the farm part of it per se, and just thinking about life as a nonprofit leader, do you have any kind of advice that you would offer to somebody who's considering a career in the social impact sector? And I will just say, as an addendum to that I think that very few high school students even know that all of this kind of work exists. I think that you know, if you're going to find out about it, you're often going to find out about it either because you have become a client of a social service agency, and so you know about it that way, or because you discover it when you're in college and, you know, the way the world works and the problems of the world, and you decide you want to do something about it. But for somebody who does know that they want to work in the social impact sector, what do you say?
Trust your instincts and not your insecurities. It's really easy to listen to that doubt, but if you want to make a difference, you'll figure out a way to, and just, you know, move forward. It's easy to look behind and see what you did wrong, but no one else is looking at that. Only you are. So, you know, if thinking about, like, if you create something, it doesn't matter what it is, you're immediately going to look to the flaws, and that's with nonprofit work as well. You know, you focus on the failures and you don't focus on the success, but you gotta, like, good enough is good enough, and you're making a difference. And if you get hung up on, oh, I didn't do this right, or I should improve that, there's so much positive work to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the social impact sector is taking on some very, very big challenges. I want to reconnect people with the earth and know where their food comes from. I want people to rediscover their creativity. I want people to, you know, I don't want there to be any homeless people anymore. I mean, these are huge challenges, and you do have to have a little bit of chutzpah to take that on.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Great. This has been great. I love your thoughts about positivity, and I'm going to take that to heart, and I really appreciate it, and I think a bunch of other people will too. Any last things you want to say before we sign off?
Just thank you so much for having us, and just positivity. Like, we just need to, like, there's so much heaviness.
Oh man.
You know, so let's be a little bit more positive, and having that be, because energy is so infectious.
Yeah.
You know, so if we just, there's so much negativity. Let's have that inoculation of positivity.
And it's a good time to be positive out at the farm with the seeds just getting started and plants growing and the field starting to look a little bit green maybe.
Yeah, and we're open dawn to dusk. So even if it's like, I need a recharge during lunch, like, we have picnic tables. Nice. And, you know, so just come to the farm and have a little.
People are welcome to just drop in and hang out for a bit. Welcome just to drop in.
Yep, great. Dawn to dusk. So.
All right. Good. Well, thank you so much, Lynn. And
thank you for having me.
I hope you have a great growing season.
Thank you.
All right.